My name is Alina, and for years I kept my mouth shut. Not out of fear exactly, at least not at first, but out of loyalty, or maybe habit. Growing up in a small, dusty town where everyone knew everyone's business, silence was safer. My father, Victor, was the kind of man who commanded respect without raising his voice often. When he did, though, it echoed. It happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was 16, home from school early because of a canceled class. Dad was in the living room, remote in hand, flipping channels absent-mindedly. The news was on, some segment about a local scandal involving embezzlement at the factory where he worked as a foreman. Names were being thrown around, investigations mentioned. I didn't think much of it until I saw his face tighten. He turned off the TV abruptly, the screen going black with a soft click. The room felt heavier suddenly. He looked at me, his eyes hard like steel. "Get out," he said. His voice was low, controlled, but it cut through the air like a knife. I froze in the doorway, my backpack still slung over one shoulder. "Dad? Get out." He didn't yell. He never yelled. That was the scariest part. I backed away, heart pounding, and went to my room. I didn't come down for dinner that night. Mom tried to coax me out, saying he was just stressed from work, but I heard them arguing later, whispers through the walls about money troubles, about keeping things quiet. From that day on, things changed. Dad withdrew. He stopped talking about work, stopped asking about my day. He'd come home late, smelling of whiskey sometimes, and lock himself in his study. Mom walked on eggshells. And me? I stayed quiet. I told myself it was to keep the peace. If I didn't ask questions, maybe everything would go back to normal. Years passed. I left for college in the city, 2 hours away, promising myself I'd build a new life. But home pulled me back on weekends, holidays. Dad had retired early, health reasons, they said. Heart issues. He spent his days watching TV again, but now it was old westerns, reruns where the good guys always won. He never mentioned that evening. Neither did I. I was 25 when the man showed up. It was a crisp autumn morning. I was home visiting, helping Mom with groceries. A knock at the door, firm, official. Dad answered it. I was in the kitchen, but I heard voices, Dad's gruff greeting, then a stranger's smooth tone. "Mr. Harlan, Detective Reyes, State Police. Mind if I come in?" Dad hesitated. "What's this about?" "Just a few questions, about the old factory case." I peeked around the corner. The man was tall, mid-40s, suit slightly rumpled, badge glinting on his belt. He looked tired, like he'd been chasing ghosts for years. Dad let him in reluctantly. They sat in the living room, the same room where it all started. Mom busied herself in the kitchen, pretending not to listen. I did the same, but my ears strained. Reyes pulled out a notebook. "We've reopened the investigation into the 2015 embezzlement at Harlan Steelworks. Over $500,000 vanished. Your name came up in some old reports as a potential witness." Dad shifted in his chair. "I told the investigators back then. I didn't see anything, didn't know anything." Reyes nodded slowly. "That's what the file says, but new evidence surfaced. A ledger, hidden in an off-site storage. Your initials are on several entries, transfers that don't add up." The air thickened. I felt my stomach drop. Dad's initials? He was involved? Dad's voice stayed steady. "Must be a mistake. I was just the foreman. Accounting wasn't my department." Reyes leaned forward. "Mr. Harlan, we have a witness now, someone who was quiet back then but isn't anymore. They say you knew, that you helped cover it up, for a cut." Dad's face paled. "Who's this witness?" "Can't say yet, but they're credible, and they're pointing fingers higher up, maybe even to the old CEO who's running for office now." I gripped the counter. This was bigger than I thought. The factory scandal had faded from the headlines, but if it tied to politics... Dad stood abruptly. "I think we're done here." Reyes didn't move. "One more thing. Your daughter, Elena, she was home a lot back then. Kids notice things. Maybe she saw something?" Dad's eyes flashed. "Leave my family out of this." Reyes stood, handing Dad a card. "If you remember anything, call, before we have to come back with a warrant." The door closed behind him. Silence fell over the house like a blanket. That night, Dad called me into the living room. The TV was off. He looked older, lines etched deeper around his eyes. "Elena," he started, voice soft, That day, years ago, when I told you to get out. I nodded, throat tight. We'd never spoken of it. The news was reporting on the investigation starting. They mentioned whistleblowers. I panicked. I thought if you heard, if you asked questions, it'd drag you into it. Into what, Dad? My voice cracked. I'd stayed quiet for so long, but now the words tumbled out. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I didn't steal the money, but I knew about it. The bosses, upper management, they were skimming, cooking books to cover losses. They offered me a share to look the other way, keep the workers in line, falsify some reports. I was drowning in debt. Your mom's medical bills from her surgery, the house payments. I said yes, just a little, I told myself, enough to get by. Tears welled in my eyes. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because they threatened us, said if I talked, we'd lose everything, maybe worse. Small town, everyone connected. I thought silence would protect you, protect all of us. I sat beside him, the couch creaking. And now? He sighed, rubbing his temples. Now, that detective. The witness must be one of the old accountants, finally talking. Statute of limitations might not cover it all, and if the CEO's involved, this could blow up. We sat in silence for a long time. Then something shifted in me. All those years of biting my tongue, of pretending everything was fine, it wasn't protection, it was prison. The next day, the man, Detective Reyes, came back again, this time with a partner. They had questions for me specifically. I invited them in. Dad watched from the hallway, face ashen. In the kitchen, away from him, I told them everything. Not what Dad confessed, no, I wouldn't betray him like that yet, but what I'd overheard as a kid. Arguments on the phone, late-night meetings, envelopes of cash hidden in the garage. Reyes took notes. This helps a lot. We can subpoena records now. As they left, Dad confronted me. Why, after all this time? Because staying quiet didn't save us, Dad. It just let the guilt eat you alive. Your heart problems, stress from carrying this alone. Mom's worry, the same. He sank into a chair, defeated. Weeks later, the story broke wide open. Headlines screamed about corruption at Harlan Steelworks, arrests of executives, the CEO dropping out of his campaign. Dad testified, voluntarily, in exchange for leniency. He got probation, community service, no jail time. The town buzzed. Some called him a traitor, others a hero for finally coming clean. Me? I moved back home temporarily to help Mom through it. Dad and I talked, really talked, for years, about regrets, about choices, about how silence can be louder than words. One evening, as snow fell outside, it was December now, Dad turned on the TV. The news was covering the trial's end. He watched for a moment, then reached for the remote. But he paused, looked at me, and left it on. "We're not hiding anymore," he said quietly. I smiled, tears in my eyes. "No, Dad, we're not." In the end, the truth didn't destroy us, it freed us. And sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying quiet, it's speaking up when it matters most, even if it takes years to find your voice.